Olympic Games, the NBA, NASCAR, and NFL. He's now the executive director of the Sports Emmys. Welcome, Steve Ulrich. Now, I don't know about you, but if Martin Scorsese, John Sayles, and Spike Lee call the same guy they want for sound editor, I'd say, what's his number? The nominations are too many to name, but he's an Oscar winner for Hugo and an Emmy Award winner for Boardwalk, supervising sound editor Phil Stockton. And finally, I've got to tell you something about this fellow, Rudy Gaskins. Lord Chesterfield once wrote, "I have seen the dirty ropes and oily pulleys that run the gaudy show." And this guy is the poster man for this. He's cast, he's directed, he produces, he teaches, and he's also my personal consultant when I need somebody with brains. Welcome again, Rudy Gaskins. So here's what we have. I'm going to ask the folks, we probably have about 5 minutes apiece, except for Paul, who uses big words. We've got to give him more time. Who's it from? Oh, it's from Paul Allen Rubens. So I'm going to ask just questions that I think that you'd want to know, like how much money can I make? Let's get down here. Like David Mamet said, it's not the money, it's the money. That's why we named it Money. But I'm going to ask what is their relationship with people that do these jobs? How do they get them? And what they're looking for in a talent. And I'd like to start off with Christiana. Christiana, how do you interact with talent? How does that work? And by talent, I mean people that do voices. It's often called voiceover talent, a voice artist. I just call it a voiceover performer. But how do you interrelate with them? How do you do that?
I probably...
Take Paul's.
No.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Excuse me. I probably talk to a voiceover artist every day, or I email with voiceover artists every day. We were talking a little bit before we came on about how much the industry has changed over the last 5 years or so. But my job is really to find the right voice for the right spot. In television news, we're using the same voices a lot. There's a voice of the station. So obviously there I'm not looking for a different voice, but we do lots of different promotional things. And so I'll contact agencies, ask them for a voice that's, sticky sweet for a woman 65 years old, and they'll send me, a few reels of people there. And then once I find someone I like, we work together to get the spots done. But I think in a little bit different from what you're going to hear from a lot of these other people is I'm working on stuff that I send the voiceover in the morning, the spot's done in the afternoon and on the air, and off the air by the end of the day. So that's one big difference, I think, when you're looking at television news, is you're looking for somebody who's fast, somebody who gets your direction very quickly, because sometimes you don't have a chance to go back and do it a second time.
Christiana, you're talking about a spot. Are you referring to a TV commercial or promo? And what's the difference?
Well, what we refer to a promo generally as something that's for the station. So something that is about either one of our news broadcasts or perhaps sweepstakes or we just ran a series of Black History Month spots that needed a very distinctive voice. So those are promos. And, in the promo world, we're working in anything from 4 seconds to 30 seconds. We used to do 60-second spots, but nobody apparently watches those anymore. So 30 is about as long as we get. And then commercials are anything that might be sponsored. So a commercial is, Chrysler is doing a commercial that, runs 30 seconds and is purely about their vehicle. So from my world, most of what I'm working on is really a promo.
Right, and these people that do promos, do they see the picture at the same time that they record their part?
Almost never.
Really?
And I don't even know if they ever see them when they're finished. Because like I said, some stuff happens so fast that it's in and out of the can in less than 24 hours.
Do they often do multiples during the day? One after another promos, like a different cuts of that one, like a 10-second, 15, 30, and then they have other ones as well? Now,
Absolutely,
we're talking about promos being that they promote the station, right? Like, coming up, she's the sheriff, and then a very special BJ and the Bear. Next! You know? That's why I haven't been hired for those.
That is not our voice of the station.
Okay.
But yeah, we will often record multiple lengths at the same time. So I'll ask a voiceover artist to do a 5, a 10, a 15, and a 30. And if we're going to produce them all, we record them all at the same time. And the catch is he's got to make them all, or she has got to make them all sound just as good, no matter how long they are. And sometimes I send 10 seconds worth of copy for the 5, and they have to also figure out how to make that sound good. So.
What are some of the specific skills that are needful to do promos other than being cast well? You mentioned you get a sweet voice, you want an older person, a 65, okay, you have a sweet voice. What are just some of an overview of some of the skills that are needed for that specific category of voiceover performance?
I would say the people that I continually go back to are people that get it quickly and can send me back something that's usable within a couple hours.
What do you mean send you back?
I get almost all my spots via email.
Via email, and where do they record them?
I don't know. Sometimes I think they're all in their pajamas someplace, and I'm jealous.
Home recording circumstances sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot of home recording. There are a number of people that we use that do have that do go to studios, but to be honest, those are getting few and far between because they can get enough quality in a home recording if they've set it up correctly.
Right. And they also, and this is a rhetoric question, but they need to be able to squash time and fill it out. Namely, make things faster but don't appear faster.
Absolutely. To be able to enunciate, like I said, when I send just a little too much copy, to actually make that sound good and have somebody understand every word in that short amount of time. It's tough. I mean, writing a 15-second spot is tough, but voicing a 15-second spot is probably even harder. And figuring out exactly what the correct words are that you want to draw out, making people understand the product and, get an idea for why we want you to watch the news at 6. It's difficult.
Right. Now, final question, and I don't know if anybody's interested in this. What do they make per one of those spots? I mean, those promos, since they're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe more in a row, what do they make per?
Well, it depends.
Say it's union.
We are all union,
okay.
Yeah, so we can't hire anyone who is not union or in the process of becoming union. And depending on the spot, I'd say the normal spot is about $250.
$250.
If you're doing a billboard, you're doing it for $100, $90-something. But
what's a billboard?
Billboard is today's weather and traffic is sponsored by Dodge.
Okay.
Go to the Dodge dealer to get
All right, that's good for a C note for me.
Yeah.
I'm in there. I like to be paid by the verb. Thank you very much. Would you give a hand to Christiana for that? So did you say mix it up, meaning like go to different things, or were you just teasing? Okay, who do you think should go next? You? I think Jen's kind of... Jen, Paul's in the audio books. Jen, you deal with animation, and particularly, I know that back in the day, what does that mean? But just like a few years ago, you did a lot of stars. You get people from Broadway into animated feature-length films for Disney. How about kids, and how about non-stars? What is that like?
Sure. So I'm a casting director. I'm sure all of you know what a casting director does. I did bring, this is the new book, it does have a chapter on voiceover and animation casting. They're selling them at the museum, we're selling them afterwards, so I'll
and that's the Confessions of a Casting
Confessions
Director.
of a Casting Director, so plug for my book. So casting, so I work in animation, I also work in the live action world as well. I'll talk a little bit about kids casting, it's one of my fortes, and I'll talk about casting Dash and The Incredibles, maybe, that's a good story.
Sure, what's Dash and Incredibles?
Sure, so everybody saw The Incredibles, remember that movie? Yeah. It's a great movie to study the voice acting, and the reason why I love it is because the voices could have been coming out of live actors. The acting is so good between Craig T. Nelson and Holly Hunter. Sarah Vowell, and little Spencer Fox, who was Dash, the son. So when I arrived at Disney in 2002, they had already seen a lot of the LA kids for this role of Dash, and we needed a spunky, energetic 10-year-old with, wide-eyed and bright-eyed and full of energy. And I am from New York City. I was living in LA at the time, and I asked if I could go back to New York to do some New York casting, because I always felt that the kids in New York had a lot more going on. They were on the subway. They were not getting out of the car and going to all their many auditions in Burbank.
They know how to use small caliber guns.
Exactly, yes, all that. Yeah. So I came back to New York. This was 2002. We were still recording on CDs, right? This was the time we didn't have MP3s, or if we did, it was not something that was so easy. And I auditioned a bunch of my favorite boys, and I had to ask them in the audition to play out a teacher at school and do an imitation of somebody. And I saw probably 70 of my favorite boys between the ages of 8 and 12. And for those of you who have kids, you know that the age, a 9-year-old boy's voice is very different from a 12-year-old, is very different from a 7-year-old. In walked Spencer Fox. He was 10 years old. He was a kid that had been in for me for commercials prior to my working at Disney. He had everything. He was charismatic, he was funny, he was natural, he was smart as a whip. We all came back for the callbacks. He got the part fair and square. Because he was only 10, his voice stayed unchanged through the entire recording of The Incredibles. And at the time, the movie was in such a good script form that they were really ready to do production recording. He did all the incidentals. He did all of the toys.
No, what are incidentals?
Like, he did the video game stuff for Dash, and any, I don't know if they had a campaign with McDonald's, they may have. He was able to voice all those roles because his voice remained unchanged. I had other movies where my boys' voices changed midway through, and we had a lot of challenges to either dial them up where you sound like you're on, helium. Whippets for those of us. Whippets for those of us who grew up in New York City.
Yeah, I didn't want you to say peyote.
And that's a challenge in itself. So Spencer got the part, and we cut 2 years later. He came in for me for pilot season a year ago, and now he's, I think, a freshman at Sarah Lawrence College. And he's actually quoted in the book, in the animation chapter, he talks about how amazing that experience was. And if I can find the page later, I'll read it to you. So that's kids casting.
Right. Let me ask you a question here. Yeah. You're like Margaret Thatcher. I'm just waiting to get in there, right? But with regard to, and I'm really happy for Spencer, but we want to make money. Yeah. So, with regard, what would be your advice with someone that has a talented kid that's interested? Because I'm just adding that they really need to be interested in performing. What would your suggestion be on getting them into the skills of voiceover? Just from the beginning, acting classes, improv, what?
Yeah, I mean, I occasionally teach voiceover classes for kids. We're going to start to do more of them. Kids need to be really good readers because you're given that copy right there, and oftentimes they're asked to read something else. And so,
when you say copy, you mean
copy? I mean scripts. For instance, my colleague and I worked on Peter Rabbit, and for the initial, it's on Nick Jr. And for the initial audition, the boys had 13 pages of script to read and be familiar with. So an 8-year-old boy who might not be facile in reading is going to really have a challenge versus a smart 10-year-old who can process. So one of the things that at Jen Rudin Casting we espouse all the time is the importance of reading, and kids reading aloud every single night. So even though you think your child is terrific and would be a great actor, if they can't read on the spot, and be able to process a quick script that's given to you, they really can't be in show business, bottom line. And you would be shocked how many people came in for Peter Rabbit, have come in for Charmin, even a simple voiceover audition, and I can tell that they're having trouble putting the words together, and I will often call the voiceover agent because I'm a nice person and I care and say, I think you need to call this mom because he's 10 years old and he was stumbling through the reading, so he's obviously